until for a long time as well. What I look for is someone who has a psychological need to win. I don't mean a want to win. I mean a all-consuming, almost destructive need to win. These are the people that drive things further and faster and cannot stop working. What I've discovered is that with most of those people, they usually come from a household where one parent was super supportive and the other parent was volatile or missing. So they learn to manage chaos when they're young. It's a very common element I've seen in some of the best founders. The other thing I look for is a high degree of intelligence, and I don't mean like per an IQ test, but they have a richness of thought about the area they're working on where they can explain it very quickly and simply. It's not like a 5,000 word description of what the company does. And I keep seeing this recurring pattern of the most powerful founders have this combination.
And do they have that ability to define their product in that way at the very earliest stage? Or is that like, so have they spent all this time thinking about it pre-product, or is that something that they kind of grow into where?
It's both. So I'll use two very opposite examples. One who's a close personal friend of mine, Elon Musk, and the other person who had the pleasure in backing an audio Twitter, which was Jack Dorsey.
Yeah.
I met Elon January of 1996. My partners and I funded him to build Zip2, which was Yelp 20 years ago. And we were luckily acquired. Elon made a bunch of money that way. Unfortunately, I just went to his co-founder's funeral 2 weeks ago, who died prematurely at 51.
Wow.
Which was very sad. And when I met Elon, I knew from the second I met him that this was a guy who was driven. He was driven for hugeness, and he was exceptionally bright. It just like radiated brightness and intensity to me. And I felt it. And we became friends, and Zip2 had a good outcome. But I think the most interesting thing is like he started X.com, which I didn't back, which was a mistake. And they merged with the Confinity guys.
Why not? Why didn't
PayPal.
you back that?
I didn't believe that an internet-only bank was going to work. That was Elon's idea. And it was called X.com because he had no idea what he was doing, and he started a shell company to avoid paying short-term taxes.
Sure.
That's why it's called X.com. And I saw amazing things in Elon, like incredible risk-taking, but what I saw in him was like just a ridiculous drive to win. And I think this time I saw it the most was about 10 years ago. I hadn't seen Elon for a while. I called him up, and he says, I just got out of the hospital. I almost died from meningitis and malaria. I was like, are you kidding me? He says, no, I'm serious. He goes, but I'm doing something new. I'm like, okay. Like what? He goes, let's meet for coffee. So we met for coffee on University Ave in Palo Alto. I remember it clear as day. And he goes, I have some ideas about space. And I was thinking, uh-oh. And so I'm paraphrasing the discussion, but Elon basically said, I'm thinking about launching mice to Mars. Do you think that's crazy? And I said, do they come back? And he said, no. And I said, yes, that is crazy. But we had to back up, and I asked Elon, like, why do you want to do this? He goes, I want to be the first person to do interstellar travel. I have to save humanity, and the way I'm going to save them is by making us a multiplanetary species. So unlike some of our friends who are into saving the Earth and avoiding global warming, I'm not focused on that. I'm not focused on how can we live on other planets. And he had an intensity of drive about that, but he had no idea of what the business was going to be or the product. And then over a period, and like he experimented, like going to Russia to buy a former nuclear missile to use it to launch mice.
Sure.
But underneath it, he had this drive and he had a vision of what he wanted. It was driven by passion. It was not driven by math or some kind of calculus.
Or money.
Or money. And people thought Elon's idea was pretty nutty. And then he said, look, I'm going to do this, but he figured out the intermediate product, which is a business to do to do satellite launch.
Yeah.
Before you can do interstellar travel, you got to do something before that, because why do you do interstellar travel? So he started to do satellite launch, and then he basically, through just incredible intensity, built up a great company in SpaceX.
Yeah.
And I am like, I cannot believe what he's done in 10 years from a scratch no idea. He was not a rocket person. He knew nothing about the space business.
He's just a brilliant guy.
He's a brilliant guy.
He's Iron Man.
Intense.
I mean, come on.
What?
He's Iron Man, right? No.
Yeah, I know him as Elon, so it's like, I just know him as a person. So,
right.
Iron Man.
Well,
You know, and then there's Jack on the other side. Jack is.
well, can I ask you about just something on Elon? Do you think were his motivations of X.com now that was his, that was really his first big product? Was he motivated more by money on that, and then he had made money, so he was less concerned, or was he just never, are these guys who start these, that are like, was he like Zuck, where he just like,
He thought he hated running errands and hated running errands because he had $1 million McLaren F1, which was like 1/5 of all the money he had left after he had spent it on X.com. Driving it around Palo Alto with bird poop on it, going to Safeway to pick up groceries. He
crashed it, didn't he?
He crashed it with Peter Thiel in the car mistakenly. And he's like, people waste so much time doing errands. So he said there should be an internet-only bank, because why do I want to go to a bank and talk to people? And that's where his idea came from. And I said, Elon, I think most people want to feel the security that there's a bank. So my partners, I didn't back him, and that was a mistake. But it is what it is.
Yeah.